What up, people? What's good? Salute.
Yes, sir.
Yo, what's good, everybody? Salute to the tribe. We're hip hop and comics and hip hop. We're a niche channel. Reserved for the best. It's super dope. I do sell comics. Check me out on Instagram at 6th_element_comics. Yeah, because comic books are the sixth element of hip hop. Oh, wow. What's good, y'all? It is the sixth element of hip hop. I am your host, Reno Noir, and this is my co-host right here, Stu Dog. What's good, Stu?
Peace.
Slade Wilson in the building. Salute. Corey Adger, what's good in the SE sixth element hood, baby? Chilling. What's going on with? Got it. Let's do bugging. Oh man, I quit smoking today. You know, I still blow the herbal, but I just quit smoking the square.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask that question.
Yeah. Had to make a change. What? Where's my? Hold on. God damn. It's been a hell of a day, man.
So what happens when you stop smoking squares? You forget everything. You just can't get. He'll get it together.
It might be something to do with it. I don't know, but yeah, man. We got two big shows today. Two big episodes, I should say, of two mega dope shows. But both these episodes are very lackluster, in my opinion, compared to the previous. It's like last week, Wu-Tang was great. It was the purple tape. It was amazing. Mandalorian was dope. It had this dope new creature, alien character that was hella cool, and it was you had Bo-Katan, and we saw the Mythosaur. It was incredible. And then this week, I don't know, man. They both fell short, in my opinion, but we'll get deeper into it. This episode of Mando was a sleeper, definitely not what the series is known for. I can't agree more, Slade. It is definitely not a typical Mando. If I were telling somebody that this is like my favorite Star Wars show ever, and I told them to go watch it, and this was the first episode they saw, I would be embarrassed. Not because it's like the worst thing ever, but it's just not a good representation of the show, in my opinion. But yeah, season 3, man, continuing with chapter 19 of the Mandalorian. The episode's called The Convert, and the season's third episode is bound to be very interesting for longtime Star Wars fans, as most of it takes place on Coruscant, which was really cool. It looked great. Coruscant looked awesome. You know, the former capital city of the Empire was never properly fleshed out in the movies. You know, we just got glimpses of it here and there in the prequels, but the old expanded universe, now known as Legends, used it a lot more. And The Convert lifts a lot of that lore to flesh out the planet. A lot of Legends stuff going on lately, and we'll talk about that too. But yeah, season 3, episode 3 also introduces some rather interesting elements of the New Republic. All in all, the Convert not only offers fan service to longtime aficionados and connoisseurs of Star Wars, but the episode definitely builds the plot for the rest of the season. And Mandalorian is heading to some interesting places. It seems, to say the least. We had and then the battle at Mandalore. Chapter 19 opens with Din and Bo-Katan in the mines. They had just had the dopest episode, last week, and they had just popped up out of the Lake Minnetonka, and Bo-Katan saw the Mythosaur, but she doesn't talk about it. She doesn't tell They discuss what they witnessed under the water, and didn't see the mythosaur. He had no idea, and he didn't know she saw it, and she doesn't tell him about it. Instead, she just says, "Hey, we should leave," and they take off. And then on the way back to Calavella, they pick up contacts, and they're attacked by the TIE fighter, the TIE interceptors, a venerable Star Wars fighter design, and the TIEs get the upper hand, and Din tells her to go to Calavella so he can get his fighter, and so that they have a chance. Excuse me. After manning the aft turret, he drops out of the ship to the castle, and he gets into his fighter before it can get blown up by the firing TIE fighters at the moment. And then, he zips up and destroys that TIE fighter. And between Bo and Din's flying and fighting, they dispatch all the TIE fighters one by one. But as they make their way back to the castle, they see it's already been attacked by TIE bombers, and they try to chase it. But then a wave of reinforcement heads in, and Din tells Bo, we gotta retreat. And the two break atmosphere, and Din gives Bo the coordinates to a safe place. And then we hop over to Coruscant. And again, I don't know, Stu, what did you think? I thought that this representation of Coruscant, the imagery, was great. It was like the prequels, but I feel like it even gave us even more than the prequels.
Oh yeah, it gave us a lot of
Visually.
depth. Yeah, it gave us a lot of depth into Coruscant. Makes you ask some questions when they talk about the mountain peak, how high it is, so that lets you know there's something under that exoskeleton that they're standing on. If we'll
And
ever
then,
get to see that,
right,
that would be great.
we get that good
Uh,
shot of the opera. Remember in Revenge of the Sith where Palpatine was teaching Anakin about the myth of Darth Plagueis the Wise, who was learning to cheat death, and they were in that. It was that opera, and they had the like weird floating water
oh
stuff in.
yeah,
Remember that shit? And so that we see that opera, that big dome from Revenge of the Sith. That's really cool. And there, Dr. Pershing was the little guy from season 1. He's been there since the jump. He was working for the German guy with the best scar, and he has the best scar, and he hires a Mandalorian. With that guy, his little assistant guy, and Moff Gideon's scientist, and they were working with the cloning and all of that. And he gives a speech about joining the New Republic and what he can bring to the table. And afterwards, he's feted by the glitterati of Coruscant, but is obviously uncomfortable with the whole thing. And it gets kind of weird here. This is where the episode kind of I lose. It just doesn't feel like Mandalorian anymore. I didn't like any of it. I'm gonna keep it a buck. I even fast forwarded a little bit of it. It was that bad. Like I skipped some of it. Dog. Like I skipped some of it. Like it was that bad. This is, first of all, this is the longest episode of any Mandalorian episode.
yeah. And look what we get.
And
That's what I don't understand.
and that's what we get. But that length was it gave me it let me skip some. You know what I'm saying? I made my own cut, my own edit, because it's bad, bro. It's bad acting. The and I don't know if she's supposed to be non-binary, if she's supposed to be transgender, if she's supposed to be a tomboy or lesbian, or what she's representing. But clearly it looks like a man but speaks like a woman, and she's hanging out with the Dr. Pershing, and she's just the worst actress or actor next to the lady that does the mechanic, the mechanic that with the Jufro that in the beginning, she's in the beginning of she's like, but with her, I don't know. With her, it was like, it's funny. Like, it's like, okay, it's Star Wars. Bad acting is kind of the thing. This took me out of it. This chick took me out of it. And I don't know if it was her. I'm not gonna blame her. Could have been the directing, could have been the writing. It definitely was not Mandalorian. we had after taking a taxi ride, the driver droid inundates fans with Star Wars Legends lore about the planet, and it's really cool. And then Pershing returns to Amnesty Housing, where the Imperials granted amnesty from whatever they live there, and he's invited to have drinks with his fellow whatever's and there he's introduced to several ex-Imperials, including M68, that's and who he used to work with on Moff Gideon's ship. And he's like, oh wow, I didn't expect to see anybody from Moff Gideon's crew here. And they discuss what they miss about the Empire, and with him talking about yellow biscuits from the Imperial ration packs. And then he comes out of his room and there's a package of them at his door. It's really corny, just really gay. Just can't you can't. But Pershing works with the New Republic, decommissioning old equipment. It's drudgery for someone like him, but he wants to help the new government and make up for the sins of the past. And he and G68 meet several more times, and she asked him about whether he'd like to continue the research to help the Republic. And Chapter 19 also shows him answering questions from his droid caseworker about his feelings toward the New Republic, and bringing up the fact that the New Republic is only getting and blah 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 blah. It just oh man, I really it dragged on. It was super lame, in the lamest of lame ways. So but then the episode comes back and it feels like, oh, that was like a commercial, and Mandalorian's back. The show's back on. That's kind of how it felt, and that's how it felt to me, especially because, like I said, I had to fast forward some of it because it was just really terrible. Uh, I think that what they're doing here, what they did with the last episode, and somebody pointed out to me that I think what's happening is they're using the Mandalorian to sell their other crap spin-off shows, kind of like they did with Book of Boba Fett. Last episode, that cool alien robot creature thing is apparently him and the pirate guys from that episode too. The pirate who, again, I'm not really Disney man. Come on, you're doing Pirates of the Caribbean characters and Star Wars. They got like, I mean, all they were missing was like a parrot and an eye patch. Like that. Other than that, they had everything there. It was just bad. And so those are characters from Skeleton Crew, which is the next show that's going to come out down the road. And that's what they're using the popularity of this show to sell these other shows that suck that nobody would watch otherwise. And it's not fair to us like this show. You know what I'm saying? Because they're ruining the Mandalorian. They're ruining this show, using it to sell their crap. And I think that's what's going on here. So, but anyway, so the Mandalorian starts, it comes back on, and Din and Bo go the Mandalorian covert from chapter 17. They go there and they meet with Paz Vizsla, the big dude with the Gatling gun, who calls them apostates and refuses to let them enter. And Din's like, nah, man, I bathed in the waters of Lake Minnetonka. And Bo was like, yeah, he did. And Paz is like, I don't believe you. You don't follow the way either. So your word, basically only makes him look bad. And so Din pulls out the little vial of the waters of Lake Minnetonka, and he's like, I got proof. Take me to the armorer, and I'll show you.
It was a very wasn't a very exciting episode.
Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry, somebody was talking to me. Oh, yeah, it wasn't great. But yeah, so Din gives him the vial, and she tests the water in her little cauldron, and apparently that's enough to prove that it is indeed from the planet Mandalore, and it is the living waters. And she tells Din that she approves. He's no longer an apostate. He's now redeemed himself in the way, and she can rejoin them. He can rejoin them, and she also says that Bo-Katan is welcome to join the covert as well, because she
Yes,
inadvertently
she,
bathed in the waters too when she went down
yeah,
to save Din, and she hasn't removed her helmet since. So therefore, until she does remove her helmet, she's within the parameters, and there she's welcomed into the covert by the various Mandalorians. Everybody's patting each other on the back, and but Paz always had he was always hater. He always hated on Mando. The dude with the big Gatling gun, he's always hating, and so he holds back. He's not very, and he's probably remembering how Din whooped him, with the dark saber and all that, and along with the role that Bo-Katan played in the death of his relative Pre Vizsla during the Clone Wars as well. So he's got beef anyways,
both
but
of them. Yeah,
with both of them, yeah. But yeah, this episode was very divisive among the fandom. Um, it the it's very much like the episode itself is split into two separate plot lines, right? After the Book of Boba Fett brought in a significant level of criticism to the Mandoverse, which was then followed by Andor's widely praised, completely different approach to Star Wars that was just mwah. And the bar was high for the Mandalorian season 3. And I thought that they were really going to meet that challenge. In the Mandalorian's latest season started a little bit shaky with the first episode was weird, but the second one was just phenomenal. And the newest subplot is a risky one, and compared to previous Mandalorian seasons, season 3 was moving the main plot relatively fast. It only took what 2 episodes for the Mandalorian to reach Concordia and
yep.
Mandalore, and he's already dipping in the water. I thought that was the whole quest of the whole season, so that's out of the way. And I guess now they can advertise for their other, lame shows. But by the beginning of the Mandalorian season 3, episode 3, Mando had already finished his quest completely, found redemption, bathed in the waters, went back to the armorer, and that's it. And he's good. So whole quest that we thought this whole season was supposed to be about is now over after episode 2. And if you count episode 3, but it's the longest episode of the season so far. It is also one of the show's longest, uh, with a total runtime of what it was 58 minutes. And still the convert spends very little time with Bo and Din. Um, Grogu doesn't even barely get any screen time at all. It's just not even really. Again, it's almost like the episode was meant to advertise their other shows, and Bo-Katan and Din were just sort of there in the beginning and in the end. After an unusually long cold open that saw Mando and Bo in the middle of the dogfight against, all the TIE fighters, the Mandalorian moved to a completely secondary subplot involving characters that we have not seen or cared about really since season 1, but he was there in season 2, but that whole plot is stale. Dr. Pershing and then this Aaliyah Kane, Mando and Bo-Katan only come back at the very end, and so Mandalorian is known for taking Din Djarin on side quests and introducing subplots that sometimes take away from the main storyline, but curiously, the hit, this monumentally great show had never had an episode that moves away from Mando and Grogu this much entirely, pretty much. It's a 58-minute runtime, suggested a plot heavy Mandalorian episode. Like, I was so like, this is such a letdown, bro. I mean, when we wait weeks for these episodes, and then it's the longest episode yet coming. It's 58 minutes. We're really, they're gonna get deep. It's gonna be dope. This is gonna be crazy. Definitely get into Mandalore. I'm thinking he's still on Mandalore. I'm thinking we're gonna discover the cloning facility that's hidden there. I already know in my head how dope this episode's gonna be, and I can't express how let down I was. It's just, and I don't know if it's that bad or if it's just so I'm just so let down from what I expected or what, because sometimes it can make it seem worse than it is. I don't know. You'd have to tell me. Uh, the Coruscant plot had some interesting character moments, and I assume is going to. I hope, I hope that this Doctor Pershing is a major character. I hope he's going to be in every episode from now on. I hope that he is the core to the story, because they just
Yeah.
wasted an hour episode on him talking nonsense, doing nonsense stuff that meant nothing and had nothing to do with the plot of the show. So yeah, I hope that it was for something and not for no reason. I hope he's really important. But yeah, man, spending most of the Mandalorian episode with the characters that are not the Mandalorian or Grogu was a very risky decision, and I'm not really happy with John Favreau at this point. Like, that was not cool, bro. Unlike Andor, which, by the way, hasn't has is just beautiful, which established from the start that it would follow a large set of characters involved in different but interconnected plot lines across the galaxy, Coruscant included. And The Mandalorian has always been a Din Djarin focused adventure, but the Mandalorian's universe can sometimes feel small, and it does feel somewhat linear sometimes. And telling the story through Din Djarin's point of view is what has worked so far, though. So I don't. I think it was a big risk, and I think it was a mistake to stray from that. But this episode again takes a very different approach, which is why viewers are surprised and struggling to connect with this Coruscant subplot. And this episode has really divided the fandom, because some are just some just I'm just done. Some are like, you know what, this I'm done. I'm just done with Star Wars. And then some people are just like, oh, it was just great. It was just the best thing ever. These are the people that loved Obi-Wan and loved Book of Boba Fett and think they're the best. And then there's people in the middle like myself who um I'm just let down, just disappointed. It's not, it's not the end of the world. It's still a good show, but I'm definitely heavily disappointed by what we got in this hour episode. Uh the
Yeah.
Dr. Persian character, the Eli Kane subplot, it really makes an effort to shift away from the series Mando, the main characters. Um Mando gets a quest and goes on another adventure approach, yet there was no previous setup for it. I didn't expect this. We didn't expect any of this. The show was leading one place, and then it just sort of stopped, like it hit a wall and went left. And then it came back like it was coming back from a commercial break or something. It was really jarring, and I don't know who's calling the shots over there. It seems like a real Kathleen Kennedy move here, to keep it a buck. So I'm wondering whose hands this show is really in anymore.
Right. Right.
Mm,
It's definitely an episode we didn't need. Um, you could have told that story in a flashback. I don't.
yeah,
Maybe they're telling us that the doctor is more significantly important than we think,
I hope so.
but you didn't convey that in this. I mean, well, it only answered one question, and it was a question nobody asked. Like, how did Moff Gideon get a hold of the doctor to begin with? Um,
Mhm.
nobody cared. Nobody cared. I mean, it told the story of
Right.
how he got back to working for the Empire, but I mean, well, for Moff Gideon, but in the long run, nobody cared. Nobody asked that question. We knew he was there. We knew he was trying to experiment with
Yeah.
cloning,
Yeah.
on a baby Grogu, but nobody cared. It just wasn't a thing we didn't need.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's
for an hour, almost an hour episode, like you said, man, you brought up a good point. This was the longest episode we got thus far, and look what you gave us. Like you should have gave this. This should have been number two, and number three should have been number two. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like they should have flopped those and gave us an hour episode two. And
Right.
gave us that 29 minutes of this. They could have told this story in 29 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
I'd
it
been
was
happy.
so
I'd have been happier with that.
yeah. And it was a lot going on with the dark saber. I mean, it's a lot going on that this episode should have been about.
Covered.
Like, yeah.
Right.
Um, you know, the armorer made him the whistling bird, and he acquired the spear made of Beskar, and he always has dope weapons, and he's got the IB-94 blaster pistol, but his greatest weapon was that dark saber, which he earned by defeating Moff Gideon. Right now for him it's like lifting a 2-ton mallet, but once he gets the mindset to use it, it'll be light as a feather, and he'll be like Bo-Katan with it.
Right. And we
Yeah,
and we know why. I mean, we know why they sent the TIE fighters to Mandalore and the other planet because they're looking for the dark saber. Remember, Moff Gideon said, "Well, I'm gonna get it back. Don't even worry about it." So,
yeah, yeah.
you know,
And fans, we got to see it in action during the Book of Boba Fett. We got to see him chopping shit up. But there was a problem. It was too heavy for him to use effectively, right? And there was a few theories why a supposedly weightless blade was so heavy, but there was no definitive explanation. And now in that last episode, Minds of Mandalore, it's even more complicated because lightsaber blades are weightless, but that doesn't mean that they always feel that way. And they have a gyroscopic effect that makes them feel heavy to an untrained wielder. But Star Wars Rebels gave more of an explanation in the Trials of the Darksaber episode. Kanan told Sabine that when someone wields a lightsaber, his or her thoughts fuel the blade's energy. So if they were off balance or conflicted, the blade would feel heavy. And the armorer said as much when she told Din that he was fighting against the blade and all of that. And while that does make sense, there appeared to be some more something else at work, and Star Wars fans know that kyber crystals are essentially sentient in the Force. And so, just like the armor indicated, Mando's will was opposed to the Darksaber's will. But why? Why? And that might go back to Mandalorian history. The Darksaber indicated the right to unite, and rule all of Mandalore. But Din Djarin immediately, he didn't want that. He just doesn't want to rule. He didn't want nothing to do with all of that. And as soon as he won the weapon from Moff Gideon, he tried to give it to Bo-Katan, and she, couldn't take it or whatever. But it just wasn't Mando, fighting the blade. The Darksaber was fighting against Mando because he wasn't worthy to rule or didn't have it in him to rule. And and all that still could be true, but in this last episode, again, I think it complicated it more because it showed Mando getting captured by the big cyborg spider creature, and Grogu hauls ass, gets Bo-Katan, and she didn't want to come at first, but she couldn't refuse, so she hops in, goes to save Mando. And while she was fighting the cyborg spider, she found the Darksaber lying on the ground, and having used it before, she picked it up and swashbuckled the creature and made Swiss cheese. But she didn't have any problems lifting the blade. It was super lightweight to her. And supposedly the dark saber curses the efforts of anyone who doesn't win it in combat. So it goes against the lore that she was even able to wield it like that. And that's what happened to Bo-Katan with the Great Purge. But that didn't prevent her from actually wielding the blade. If anything, Bo-Katan should have been less worthy to wield the dark saber because she had abandoned the creed so long ago, the way. And all of that goes to show that Mando not being able to lift the dark saber has nothing to do with how he acquired the blade or his failing the creed that they suggested. So if anyone's been paying attention and following along with the whole Darksaber story, you're very confused at this point. And accordingly, the best explanation is still that the Darksaber doesn't personally approve of of Din Djarin personally. Bo-Katan wanted to unite and rule Mandalore, even if she had, temporarily, given up, but so she could lift the blade. And the same went for Moff Gideon. He wanted to rule and unite Mandalore. Whatever else, but that alone is what the saber seems to care about. And even if he had the wrong idea, he did want to rule Mandalore with the dark saber, and that's what counts. And meanwhile, Mando had given up the right; he didn't want it, so the dark saber was trying to find somebody new. And it looks like Mando is not going to be able to use the dark saber until he takes up the responsibility and accepts that he's going to be the leader of Mandalore and all of that, which I'm not crazy about happening. I don't really want to see Din Djarin as the ruler of Mandalore, sitting on the throne, delegating with uh with prefects and politicians. Like that's not exciting. Like Mando is supposed to be out, you know, swashbuckling and gunslinging and catching bad, bounty hunter and all of that stuff, having adventures. So yeah, I'm not really rooting for him to get better with the dark saber or rule Mandalore. And I think a lot of people who are thinking like, yeah, he's gonna be the ruler of Mandalore, and you're not really thinking that that's not really gonna be a good. That's not good for the character. That's not gonna be a good show.
No, that's not at all.
No,
No.
that's not at all. And
No.
but
This episode left us with more questions than answers.
definitely.
More, and definitely, we will definitely be back next week to make sure that uh
Oh yeah, I'm still gonna
we get,
always watch
right,
it,
we get a better
of
episode,
course,
right?
of course. But you know, this episode did give us a little a bit of George Lucas, his original dream, which obviously Star Wars all started in the mind of George Lucas. Say about him what you will, it came out of his brain, and he gave fans, you know, an incredible world to explore and and live and basically just immerse and he created is one of the greatest stories I think ever told of all time. And there are countless inspirations for Star Wars, right? From the samurai films, the Japanese legends, to American gunslinger, spaghetti western, to Greek mythology. You name it, it's all in there. But one big inspiration was that Lucas wanted to see dogfights in space. He wanted to see like World War II fighter planes having dogfights but in space. And that's a Star Wars concept. We just think about it as regular sci-fi stuff, but that was him wanting to recreate like World War II plane dogfights. And we definitely got a really good scene of that in this episode. This whole season really has been honoring that request, definitely, by giving us, I think, some of the best dogfights since the prequels. And the Mandalorian, the show, is constantly trying to bring George Lucas's vision back to Star Wars. And that's why I always praised the Mandalorian. That's why I always loved the show. That's why I loved what Filoni and Favreau were doing, because they had George Lucas on the set while they were doing the show, and I felt that was just dope, because Disney has pretty much shunned and shit on George Lucas, and shit on all his scripts and all his ideas, and they don't care anything, so they just do whatever they want. And these guys came in, and not only are they bringing George in, they're bringing legends. Okay, they're bringing legends canon back, because they tried to ruin that. Disney tried to ruin that too. And in the Disney Plus documentary about the special effects studio ILM, Light and Magic, which is phenomenal, George Lucas talks about his early process for creating the first Star Wars film, and he mentions that he thought spaceships and dogfights in space were a great idea for a movie. And Star Wars: A New Hope has obviously one of the most famous space battles in all of film. Definitely one of the first well done special effects wise. And we know with Luke and the rebels, making the trench run on the Death Star and all of that. And Lucas's idea for the dogfights really pushed the limits of filmmaking at that time. There was nothing else doing anything like that. And, they pioneered technology that became standard special effects technology for movies ever since. The company, the special effects company, Industrial Light and Magic, was created because it was just a bunch of guys that got together that kind of were pieced together working on Star Wars, just trying to figure shit out. And by the end of like the third movie, they're like, well, we kind of got a business here. Like this, let's stay together and do this for other films. And you'd be blown away how many great movies Industrial Light and Magic has been behind. And but yeah, I do like that this episode really touched on the star fight, the dog fights. I think they did it really well. Um, and it's done a lot of things right. This show has done a ton right throughout its 3 seasons, you know, bringing fun and adventure back to Star Wars, uniting the fandom that was completely divided and dispersed and giving up. Brought people, gave us faith back in Star Wars that there was still, a possibility for something cool. And it did a lot. And, although in a rare misstep for the series, it hasn't featured a lot of space battles, but there's a bad episode here and there. And but this, I don't know. I think that's cool, and I love that that they're bringing Legends lore back in a big way. There's they what are they did the Beskar armor right there, is that being lightsaber proof and all of that, because Mandalorians are I mean, you don't remember a whole lot of Mandalorian stuff going on in any of the Star Wars movies, do you? Mandalorians are from Legends. They're from the video games and the books and the comics. That's where Mandalorians are talked about the most. The stuff in Clone Wars was paying homage to that. Like Mandalorians is something that we knew intimately about from playing Knights of the Old Republic and things like that, and reading novels. And the Mandalorians of both canon, Disney canon, and Legends are both famous for their distinctive suits of armor with their helmets and the T-shaped visors that look like knights of ancient Europe, and a plethora or whatever of different weaponry and different things to combat the Jedi powers. And the armors have a bunch of different variations based on Mandalorian eras, clans, subcultures, but both continuities, Legends and this new Disney canon, established that they are typically made of Beskar, and that's something that is from canon, from Legends canon, also known as Mandalorian iron. Beskar extremely resistant to direct hits from blaster bolts and is completely impervious to lightsaber blades. That's why they use it, because it defends against lightsabers. And in both continuities, traditional Mandalorian armor is pure Beskar, but a lot of Mandalorians, due to the metal's rarity, are combining Beskar with weaker metals. Some of them don't even have Beskar. They're just made of, Durasteel or whatever, which makes them more vulnerable in battle. And obviously, they can be sliced right through. But, while Legends and Disney canon both depict vastly different versions of the planet Mandalore, I will point out, the world remains is still the birthplace and the cultural capital of the Mandalorians from Legends. Let's keep it a buck. That's from Legends. And with that in mind, one can assume that Mandalorians have to be from Mandalore, or at least Mandalorian, the system around the planet, to be true Mandalorians. But canon, Disney canon, and Legends canon established that Mandalorian culture is a creed, not a race. It's not a planet. It's not where you're from. It's how you live. And any being of any species, any background, can become a true Mandalorian if they adhere to the Mandalorian culture. And so we will see we will see Grogu being a Mandalorian. I don't know how they're gonna handle his ears because I have never seen a Mandalorian with ears coming out of the side. So I am curious to what they're gonna do with that. But him being, a 3-foot green guy with a giant head and ears would not disqualify him from being a Mandalorian. You don't have to be any certain body type or anything, and that's from Legends. Both continuities do establish that Mandalorian culture itself is clan based. You've got the different clans with the different customs, and different things. The Children of the Watch of the Disney, for instance, forbids its members from unmasking in front of others and things like that. And you know, the Mandalorians also have a historically hostile relationship with the Jedi Order. That's really why they exist. That's why they exist the way they do. That's why they wear the armor they wear. It's why they use the weapons they use. It's why they have grappling hooks and torches and all of that stuff, is to combat the Jedi's powers and weaponry. And because, the Jedi Order exists to protect the people of the galaxy and maintain freedom, while the Mandalorians are conquerors and mercenaries for most of their history, and which kind of goes against freedom and peace and things like that. And due to that, the Mandalorians and the Jedi always clashed and always be in similar conflicts and big wars, full scale wars they've had. And despite that, there's been instances of the Mandalorians and the Jedi working alongside to each other, often due to mutual enemies that they might both be trying to kill. In Disney canon, you've got Tari Vizsla uh, becoming the only known Mandalorian Jedi, while in Legends, the Mandalorians and the Jedi fought alongside each other during the Clone Wars and the Yuuzhan Vong War, which is a whole. I haven't even thought about. Dude, we have to get into Legends more, man. There's just so much. It's so much better. But unsurprisingly, man, the warlike based nature of the Mandalorians has a long history with all types of subcultures and Mandalorian clans. And but one group, the Death Watch, is the cause of a lot of the bloodshed and the suffering in the prequel era of Star Wars. The Mandalorians writ large grew past their time as conquerors, and they became relatively noble but still mercenaries. But the Death Watch, through the Jasta Mariel's Super Commando Codex, sought to return them to their bygone bloodthirsty ways and make them just, ruthless, merciless conquerors again. And so that led to the Civil War, the Mandalorian Civil War between the Mariel's true Mandalorians and the Death Watch terrorist group. And the war is shown in detail in Legends and brought into canon in the Mandalorian season 2. So that is coming straight. So and I bring this up because, like Stu, you always say, what's her name, Kathleen Kennedy, came in and tries to say that Legends is no longer canon. All that stuff we've just been dealing with for 20 years. That's just trash now. Well,
I don't get how you could even do that. Based on the fact that it has to, like, in order to do anything for Star Wars, even if you make a YouTube video, it's got to be approved.
mm,
They have a whole like mail in. I guess I don't know what it is, but I do know Lucasfilms has like
some
this.
way Lucas
Yeah, they have
approves
this.
those
Yeah,
novels. Yeah,
yeah, they had this whole process to whether you write a book, do a YouTube video, film a movie, it
video
has to
game.
get their approval. Video game, it has to get their approval. And they approve, let's say if you just did something and it didn't quite fall in with the Lord, they tell you and you have to change it before you can put it out.
Right.
So we know they're very careful But what they approve and don't approve, it's just Kathleen Kennedy dumped it all. As soon as she took over, she was like, nah, none of it's canon, none of it works, none of it. But yet, people I know that have read Star Wars books and things of that nature, they all say the same thing. They all say, like, wait a minute, that's kind of reminiscent of this, or that's kind of reminiscent of that, or that was in this book. It was the same thing, but they changed it. Like, like
Mm-hmm.
Star Killer Base. There's a guy I work with. He always said Star Killer Base was in one of those books, but it wasn't the way they put it, but it was a similar thing. And he was like, they got that from this book. And I mean, I believe him. I mean, but if you're gonna borrow from other things that people wrote, then why make it not canon if you're gonna borrow it?
Yeah. And bro, you got in Legends and in what you call them canon, uh, you have Jango Fett becoming the Mandalorian under the mentorship of Jaster Muriel. And while Jango's history with Muriel is, and that of the true Mandalorians, the war with the Death Watch is explored in the Legends book. It's called Jango Fett Open Seasons. It's a graphic novel. It's a comic by Hayden Blackman. Canon references them in the Mandalorian, so they do reference that whole comic series. And the Legends era version of Boba Fett is a Mandalorian by culture. But in canon, in the movies, in the Disney canon, Boba Fett is not a Mandalorian by culture or anything. But again, in Legends, Boba Fett is a Mandalorian, as he should be. So this whole show, The Mandalorian, was originally proposed as a Boba Fett show, but Disney was afraid to risk a character as important as Boba Fett on this idea, and so they told him, you can do a Mandalorian show, but it's got to be a different character. And so that's how the Mandalorian was born, and thank God they did it, because Mandalorian's been a saving grace for Star Wars in so many ways. But then they dropped Book of Boba Fett, which is supposed to, I mean, my mind should have exploded, bro. Book of Boba Fett should have been the greatest thing since fucking Air. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's Boba Fett. Come on, B.
Right.
That was supposed to be way better than that. Was supposed to be the peak of everything, and it was utter trash. So, Star Wars is not safe in the current hands. We need a Jedi to go and retrieve Star Wars from the evil Disney Empire because it's in danger. But yeah, but Legends, him being Boba Fett being a Mandalorian in Legends and not in this canon, wearing his father's Mandalorian armor for practical and sentimental reasons. And he says, in Boba Fett's dialogue with Din Djarin, in his armor's chain code, he reveals that Jango fought in the Mandalorian Civil Wars like his Legends equivalent did, that's from Legends. So they're pulling that from Legends, which also made him an enemy of the Death Watch. But yeah, listen, don't believe them when they say that they're not using Legends, that Legends canon doesn't exist, because I can give you example after example of Legends canon, Legends information, Legends mythology and lore being woven in by Filoni and Favreau and George Lucas and these guys that know it's Legends canon, but they might not be like, oh, hey, Kathleen, we got this idea from this Legends book. Can we use it? She'll be like, no, Legends isn't canon. So they just don't tell her. They just let her think that they made it up, and it's straight out of fucking Legends, and it's beautiful. Yeah,
They
yeah.
have
Or
to.
rather,
I mean,
they have.
given what she did with Obi-Wan, changing the script of Obi-Wan and making it a script that she wrote years ago,
Mhm.
which they told her was whack then, and it's still whack now. Like nobody liked it then, and nobody she couldn't get approval for it back then.
Right.
because it wasn't good, and you're gonna sneak it in there now. And I mean, I guess it takes for everybody to tell you it's not good in order for you to know it's not good. But you changed all the characters. You made it something it wasn't supposed to be.
Bro,
Uh,
even when we tell Kathleen Kennedy it's not good, she don't believe us. When,
no,
when people when people tell her what she's doing is whack, she says, "Oh, it's just because they're sexist or they're chauvinist or misogynist or
man, I don't
she
get
she
that,
she
man.
blames
So
us."
maybe she's the sexist. Maybe she's the misogynist.
I
Maybe
mean,
she's the chauvinist. Maybe she's the female chauvinist. I mean, think about it. If we did it as
clearly,
males, right? That's what they say about us. But if you a
right?
female, you do it, who's this, you the same thing. I mean, come on. The ball bounces in both directions. The door swings both ways.
It
So
does.
if you're a female, and all you want to do is see female characters and have female characters, dog out male and beat male. You, that's a female chauvinist. Come on, you're not biased. You're one sided, and
That's
it's
it.
so I guess it's okay to be one sided going towards the field, but it ain't okay to be one sided going. So yeah, you gotta have balance. Star Wars always had balance. There's always been
Always.
female and male characters in Star Wars. There's always been a good balance. Strong female, strong male. I mean, it's just you
Hmm.
can't. So then if we're chauvinist, then she's a female chauvinist, and I
Right.
can we can say that about her. We can
Uh,
publicly say that right here tonight on this channel. She's a
yeah,
female chauvinist.
I agree. If Sada was here, she could stamp it, straight up. But
So,
yeah, but Sada's not coming today, guys. I'm sorry. She's not gonna make it. She'll be back Saturday, of course. But yeah, a rather common occurrence throughout the history of Legends era Mandalorians is their manipulation by the Sith Order and their various empires. You have Exar Kun and the Tenebrae, Palpatine, and the Sith are very effective at turning the Mandalorians into their pawns. They do it all the time, and this is also the case in the new, post 2014 canon. The Death Watch, desperate to dispose Duchess Satine and the new Mandalorians, briefly allied themselves with the true Sith and the Separatist alliance. And when their plot failed, remember Dooku violently ended their partnership, but they soon became part of the Shadow Collective, which was led by the Sith pretenders, Darth Maul and Darth and Savage, Maul and Savage, the Sabraks. I call them Sith pretenders because they weren't actually Siths at that point. And unsurprisingly, Maul betrays his Mandalorian loyalists and takes the saber and rules the Mandalorians for a while. But while the clone troopers, themselves are they're man. Okay, so like remember the clones in the Clone War, those were Jango Fett clones, right? Clones of Jango Fett, clones of a Mandalorian. The armor they wear, okay, they were Mandalorians. In Legends, the clones are Mandalorians. Okay, Mandalorian culture influences a lot of the clones in both continuities. In Legends, you have Jango Fett oversaw the training of all the clone troopers. He trained them and personally trained the Alpha class ARC troopers. And he hired the Mandalorian Soy Valdar to train the clone commandos. So they were all trained by Mandalorians, and they basically were Mandalorians in all intents and purposes. And Boba Fett's efforts, resulted in all the clone trooper types becoming cultural, legit Mandalorians. But his canon counterpart didn't give a fuck. He was just completely indifferent to the clone army's training, and thus the clone troopers are not necessarily Mandalorians in the movies. And thanks to the Mandalorian journeyman protector Fen Rao in the can in but anyway, so canon's clone pilots could be considered Mandalorians by culture as Fen Rao oversaw their training. He was a Mandalorian. And so, but yeah, I mean, Mandalore is subjugated by the Galactic Empire in both Legends and Disney canon, with their Beskar reserves being mined by the regime, the totalitarian empire regime, and they've got the Empire's obsession with oppressing, the Mandalorians in canon is very similar to the way they are in Legends. If they're never reduced Mandalore to glass because the Mandalorians repelled Imperial forces far later in the original trilogy era. So that is all not real, not from Legends. But in the Star Wars Legends continuity, the Mandalorians actually beat the Empire less than a year before the Battle of Endor that took place in the movie, around the Ewok. But yeah, likely, saving them from retaliation as Canon's people. But it, basically, man, it's a lot. It's just a lot. It's a lot of It's a lot of Legends canon that's being used in the so-called Legends-free era of Star Wars. So it's cool. We dig it. Always
Right.
cool.
Always.
Yeah. And Legends, bro, and Legends gave Darth Vader a much better legacy than the film canon too. You really got to check it out. You got to check it out. Star Wars, the Star Wars, the sequel trilogy explored the legacy of Darth Vader in canon, but it was done much better in the Legends universe because George Lucas always viewed the Star Wars saga as Anakin's Anakin Skywalker's story. That's what Star Wars is to George Lucas. It's the story of Anakin, Luke Skywalker, and all of that. That's how we see it because that's the first thing we saw. Remember, Stu, we saw Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and all. That's the first Star Wars shit. Anakin and all that came later, but in Lucas's mind, in George Lucas's mind, the whole story was always about Anakin. And I mean, from the beginning, the episode 1, the prequel, Anakin's a little kid. It shows him grow up. It shows him become Darth Vader. It shows his kids what they go through, but Darth Vader, and he always viewed the saga to be Anakin's story, and so it makes sense for the post Return of the Jedi timeline to tackle that legacy that he left, and both good and bad parts. And Star Wars canon has honored his legacy in some ways, but not as effectively as it could have. Not like Legends, with Legends, showcasing a much greater variety, character impact, character development. Most people just think of Darth Vader as this, big, robotic, ominous, entity. But there's so much more to the character, so much more that they explore and dive into, in Legends, in the old expanded universe, and it's definitely worth analyzing what they did right and stuff like that. So the greatest example of Darth Vader's legacy after Return of the Jedi is definitely his family, right? With canon, you got the Legends developing the Skywalkers totally differently than Legends and canon. But both continuities have the Skywalker family struggling to overcome and right the mistakes of Anakin and Darth Vader, but also to honor the great Jedi that Anakin was before he turned to the dark side. Before he became Darth Vader, he was the greatest Jedi ever of all time. Like all of the Jedi revered him. Yoda, Mace, all of them knew he was so powerful. They knew he was the greatest Jedi ever. That's why they wouldn't let him become a master. That's why they kept their thumb over him. They knew they had to, because if he got let loose, and that's what happened, and that's what they were afraid of, and that's what happened. He became Darth Vader. It wasn't for the Emperor nerfing him with that iron lung suit that they gave him, he would have
Yeah.
been
Now
the
he would have
Emperor.
became
Yeah,
he
he would have been
because
the
I did read in one of the comics where they talked about the armor that he had because the Sith That was one thing they wore was armor. They wore like when you look at some of the other Sith, they wore like an armor type uniform.
Mm-hmm.
Um, his was susceptible to high voltage electricity. Like it couldn't
Mm-hmm.
take the shock of a lot of electricity, so like you could
Right.
overload it. And there were a few times where a few Jedi got over on him, where that's what they did to him. And
Mm-hmm.
he slowly but surely made improvements to the suit in secrecy to,
Yeah.
counteract that, so
Mm-hmm.
that it wouldn't, that it wouldn't be, he couldn't be exploited in that fashion.
And that's
Um,
how the Emperor killed
and,
him in
yeah,
the end.
and Palpatine knew that, right? Palpatine knew
Yeah.
that. He gave him the
Yeah.
suit, and he knew it was susceptible to, electrical damage if it was, jolted with high,
He hit that
voltage
Sith
electricity.
lightning. He
Yeah,
knew
that's
that's
it.
all
Right?
he had to
Yeah.
do.
Yep. Yep. Keep him in check. And I read that. I forget which comic but I read that in a comic a while back.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It's in
was like,
legend.
wow, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. It said that he actually made improvements to it so that it could actually take more voltage over time. They said the only problem he had was acquiring like the pieces that he needed in secrecy. Like he wanted to do it
Right.
without the Emperor knowing that he
Yeah.
did it.
Right.
And being as that the Empire kept watch on everything, like we saw in Andor, if he ordered,
Mhm.
let's say if he ordered, I don't know, maybe a gyrochronometer, to to his ship, they'd be like,
Yeah.
well, what do you need that for?
Yeah.
They gonna
Yeah.
want to know. You know,
Yeah.
he can't
Yeah.
choke out everybody on the ship because then they're gonna really be like, well, wait a
Right.
minute, sir. Yeah,
Uh,
so yeah,
yeah,
so yeah,
man.
you're right in that aspect. He did keep Vader down with that suit.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah.
he kept
He
him
you know,
alive, but he kept him down.
right. And because he knew, because Palpatine knew how powerful Anakin was too. I mean, they all knew. And so, the Jedi wanted to keep him in check, for his own good and for the good of the galaxy. And then, Emperor wanted to keep him in check because he knows that eventually, Vader's job is to kill him one day. Like that's the Sith job. The rule of two, the apprentice's job is to become powerful enough or crafty enough or cunning enough to kill the master Sith. And then once they
Yeah,
do, they're supposed to take on an apprentice that they train and nurture and hone until it can kill him. And then that's their
yeah,
job is the cycle continue. They're supposed to become powerful enough to kill the master. Well, Palpatine, like all Sith lords, wanted to reign forever, wanted to live forever, and wanted to try to ensure that his apprentice, even the most powerful, he wanted to have the most powerful apprentice, but also have him where he remains the emperor, remains the master. And so
right.
through
Yeah,
his greed and selfishness and all of that, but
and you
obviously,
got to remember, and you have to remember too, everyone, that Palpatine's his every Jedi or Sith they have something that they excel at, and
right?
Palpatine was the Jedi mind trick
Yeah,
influence. He can manipulate you just by talking. That was his
craft,
force power. Yeah, that was
right?
his force power. Like his specialty
Manipulation.
was the right manipulation. Like when he was talking to Anakin, like you said earlier when they were watching the space opera,
Yeah,
he was using the force on Anakin. Anakin didn't even know it. And he was telling him
100%.
like, Pat, Pat, man, I had a vision. Have you ever heard of Darth Sidious?
Yeah,
And then he told him not to tell anybody. He didn't, because anybody else would have been like, yo, like this Joker, it's got to be something up with him. But he
yeah,
didn't because he manipulated him with the Force. That's why when Mace Windu fought, he was like, don't listen to him. Whatever you do,
100%.
don't listen to him,
Yep,
because he knew that was his force power,
that's his
manipulation.
power. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
his power. And um, the book called Darth Plagueis, so good. It's so dope. So, and that's the type of shit. See, people don't sometimes they be like, how are you like, why do you love Star Wars as much as you do? Like, how are you that into it? And I get that having only seen the movies, I get you wondering that. But when you get into the books and the comics and the games and all that lore and you see how deep it gets, man, and it's so much like the movies are just like the movies are icing for
surface.
me, bro. That's icing.
Yeah,
Yeah, like The movies are like my least. I care the
That's
least about the movies.
yeah, that's the
As far
visual
as
candy. Yeah,
yeah,
but if you want to get deep, you got to read the comics and the books. I
hundred
haven't read
percent.
it. I haven't read any of the books. I heard they
Uh,
were good. I'm gonna get my hands on some of them. Read a
yeah.
couple of them.
If you I gotta recommend the Bane trilogy and then the Yuuzhan Vong war arc. So that's shit, I forget the name of that set, but it's the Yuuzhan Vong war. Um, insane, bro. And that's where you talk about Han Solo and Leia's kids, their son, Jason Solo. It's not Ben Solo, it's Jason Solo.
I heard that.
Luke,
Yeah,
yeah, Luke Skywalker and Mara Jade have a son named Ben Skywalker. So that's what
I
and
heard
then
that.
and in the movies they mixed Ben Skywalker and Jason Solo and made Ben Solo, and that was
I heard that. Did
Kylo Ren.
somebody have a set of twins? I heard.
Well, Leia had twins. That was Luke and Leia. I meant Padme and Anakin had twins. That was Luke and Leia
Okay,
were
Luke
twins.
and Leia. Now,
Yeah,
did somebody? I read that someone had. Didn't Leia's offspring go to the dark side or something like that? Somebody's
yeah,
offspring was dark, and then they came
yeah,
back, and
yeah. Han
it was a
Solo
whole
and
thing.
Leia's kid, Jason Solo. In the movies, they make him Ben Solo, and he becomes Kylo Ren and kills Han and blah blah blah. But in the books, he's Jason Solo, and he does become Darth Caedus, and he does become a Sith and super powerful and shit. And he fights Luke's son Ben, and like they go at it, him and Luke, like Darth Caedus. It's dope, man. That's why I was so excited again when they were making. I was like, they were gonna do Luke and Leia's son, uh, Ben Solo, and I was like, but no, they mean Jason Solo, and I'm like, it's Jason Solo, and they're like, it's Ben Solo, and I'm like, it's Jason, trust me. And then it was Ben, and I'm like, what even is this? I don't know. But so again, Legends, man, Darth Vader's legacy in Legends, Anakin Solo embodied it especially well. Being named after his grandfather placed extra pressure on him, and the youngest of the Solo children, fearing that he would eventually turn to the dark side like Anakin did, Jason Solo, and he was truly put to the test during the Yuuzhan Vong War, and blaming himself for Chewbacca's death and struggling over to overcome, the guilt of that. And it also created a rift between him and his father for a long time. And and then Jaina Solo, his sister, almost turned to the dark side too after having to watch Anakin die to save her and the other Jedi. But Anakin Solo, again, Anakin Solo, not Anakin Skywalker, one of their kids, Han and Leia's kids. Anakin Solo also embodied the best parts of Vader's legacy too. From his childhood affinity for machines and being instrumental in the Yuuzhan Vong War, Anakin Solo also surpassed Darth Vader's legacy, proving that he didn't have to follow in his footsteps and he could become a greater leader who inspired other Jedi Knights and became a great Jedi leader, and even forged a deep bond with his childhood friend, uh and then Anakin Skywalker's attachment to Padme led him to the dark side. Anakin Solo's romance with Tahiri helped him become a better man, and Anakin Solo's tragic death would have negative consequences on the whole, Solo family, but he left behind his own great legacy too. But that would, that's and then but Jason Solo turning into Ben Solo, Kylo Ren, uh, embodied the worst aspects of Darth Vader's legacy. That's his grandson, so and he set out to sort of finish what Darth Vader started and all of that, and he wanted to emulate Darth Vader. And oh shit. Hang on.
Mhm. Yeah, so these last three Star Wars movies weren't the greatest, but it's what we got. Um, Kathleen Kennedy continues to, uh, try to make Star Wars her own entity, but it's just not working.
Yeah, it's not. It's going in some weird places, man. Um, I don't know, man. I could geek out on Star Wars forever, as you can see. But we do have to also talk about Wu-Tang, an American Saga as well, which just did the seventh episode. That was episode 7 uh today. And it was a so-so episode. It was mostly about Divine. So RZA's brother Divine is the manager of Wu-Tang Productions, and um he's like the CEO of Wu-Tang Management, and he's sort of running the whole record label. And this episode, it just seems to be about him having a nervous breakdown, basically being overwhelmed with all the tasks and all the responsibilities of not only running a record label for the first time in his life, but having 9 artists in that label who all want to be the solo guy, and all want to have their solo career, and all have demands, and basically running him crazy. And so he kind of like almost has a nervous breakdown during the show. And that's kind of what the whole episode was about. And I kind of felt like it was a waste of a fucking episode.
I agree. I agree. I
Yeah,
was like you with Mandalorian. I wasn't interested. I mean, I watched
yeah,
it, but it just held no interest for me, or no real
yeah.
significant purpose for me either.
Mm-mm. Yeah, it was crap. Basically, it was. I mean, it wasn't okay. That was strong. It's not crap. It wasn't a bad show or anything like that. It had some cool stuff. I mean, it was cool to see. The whole thing with Mariah and ODB gonna do their song and stuff like that. We know that was cool, and little bit with Jizza. A lot about Inspector Deck. One thing in this episode, though, I decided what I suspected last episode was that I do not like the actor playing Inspector Deck. I do not like how he plays Deck. He's very zesty. Why are you so zesty, bro? Like, what about Inspector Deck is zesty? Why are you so zesty, B? I don't know. It's not cool. Like, come on, like all that, like, come, what's with all the weird faces and shit, bro? What are you doing? What is that? What,
Man, that
you
definitely
like
ain't
you
Deck.
like you want to kiss Jizza in the mouth, bro? Like, what are you doing, B? It's very odd, dude. I don't like that guy. I don't like how he's playing it. I suspected that last episode. I was like, did I see that? And I was like, maybe he was high, because he seems like he's just high as fuck on helium or some shit all the time. But I was like, maybe it's just me. Maybe he's high. Maybe it's just whatever. So I gave it this episode. We get a lot of Deck stuff, and I definitely have decided that I don't like the way he's playing this guy. Because Deck is one of my favorite members of the Wu-Tang. He's definitely one of the best rappers in the group. He definitely got the shittest end of the stick in the group. He was supposed to be one of the breakout stars, and he's always been looked at as a lower tier member. There's always your top tier Wu and your lower tier Wu, right? Your top tier Wu is obviously Ray, Ghost, Meth, ODB. And then your middle tier is RZA, Jizza, Deck, and then your bottom tier is your Master Killer and You God. But Deck was supposed to be one of those top tier guys. He was supposed to have the first solo album, and all that shit got ruined in the flood. But then when the other guys got signed, and Raekwon and Ghost and Meth and Jizza was all having success, and ODB, they were starting to blow and starting to have all this attention. now RZA and Divine and all of the people who have the ability to make Deck's album and put Deck out and promote Deck are so consumed now with everything going on with all these other artists, right? So Divine, he's never run a label before, or RZA, none of these guys have. So they didn't really know how to handle it. And you see Deck just getting kind of pushed to the wayside and put on the back burner because of the way the way fate unrolled. I mean, the flood in the basement fucked up the first album. RZA was able to salvage by fate, like Meth's and ODB's album, and so those got put out and they blew up. And Ray and Ghost, and they started getting success. And then now that they're blowing up, and now that they've got these successful albums out, and now that they're moving and shaking and doing shit, they're taking up the resources of RZA and Divine and the label and all of that. And so Deck is just standing there with his dick in his hand because he can't do nothing by himself. He doesn't have no beats. He can't record an album by himself. And so we definitely see a lot of that in this episode. We see a lot of Deck being unhappy with the way things are going and kind of getting blown off by the management, not because they don't believe in him, not because they don't like him, not because they don't want to. It's just because they are overwhelmed and they don't really know how to handle, what they've been given to deal with right now. So it's been an interesting season so far. Some really good episodes this season. Definitely the Raekwon stuff has been really cool. But yeah, this episode I felt it was filler. I felt they could have done that stuff with Divine that they did, and they could have done everything that they did. They could have crammed all that into maybe a third of the episode, and the rest of it, the rest of it could have been. Hang on. My bad. Technical difficulties. No worries. But yeah, so it's been a cool season, but this episode was definitely weak. It was definitely weak. Had some cool moments, but it was pretty
It
weak.
did. Well, hopefully next week they come back better, like you said. Maybe we'll get a good season next week. But this week
Yeah,
just wasn't it. It just wasn't it this week. So
yeah. I think next week should be better because again, might be some type of a filler episode. So we'll see. Yo, look what I found. The Blue and Cream Starks editions, Apollos, $700.
mm,
There they are. You see those? The
yeah,
Blue
I
and
see 'em.
Cream. Woo-hoo-hoo.
Mm.
Them shits are dope.
Ooh.
Damn, them bitches are. Oh man, them shit like ostrich or some shit.
Yeah, and they got the Wu symbol. Dang.
Yeah, it's the Ghostface killer symbol too.
I
It's
know.
good. Huh? It's good.
Damn. That choice is hot.
Yeah, bro. Hey, fuck. Give me a second. Hold on.
Yeah, yeah, Ghost was big on wallabies back then, man. Wore 'em a lot. Uh, he uh, he lived by those joints. So to actually see a pair now, it's uh, it's a big deal for us. But yeah, this episode of Wu Tang just that was lackluster. It could have been better. I mean, I know you need filler episodes, things like that when you do a season, but this was definitely one of those cases, and it definitely um, left me yearning for more, but not pleased at the same time. So, like I said, next week maybe Mando will be better Bad Batch will be better. Wu-Tang Saga will be better. And that'll give me something to, you know, look forward to. So definitely not a good look this week. And like I said, these aren't bad shows. It just these episodes just weren't anything to write home about. So we're not writing about. But and then I mean, I guess maybe this Wu Tang episode might lead into Inspector Deck because he did have a lot of problems with his career. The record company, wanted to push back his album in favor for other clan members. Then you had the flood. Then you had Deck. Like Reno said, he couldn't make beats, but he learned. He went in the studio, learned the beat making process, and he used that and the knowledge that he had to put out Uncontrolled Substance. Uh, and help move it along quicker because RZA at the time was doing everybody else's album plus whatever he was doing. So Deck learned how to go in the studio and make beats and move the process along a little quicker. So instead of RZA doing all the beats, he might only had to do half of them. But Inspector Deck has done beats for other Wu-Tang members and has done beats for other people in the industry.
So sorry about that, man.
Nah, it's good.
Yeah, my bad, man. Shit. No, go ahead. What were you saying?
Talking about this episode.
Oh yeah.
How
Deck, how they doing, Deck?
Yeah, how they did Deck. I was giving more history about how Deck learned how to make beats and things like that. In order to help push his career along, he had to.
Yeah.
Because at the time, the record company wanted to hold his record back in favor of other people's, and Deck had to do something. Once his album was caught in the flood, he had to make moves. He had to do whatever he had to do.
Right.
Get his album out there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, man, and it I don't think we ever it sucks because I don't think we will never know how dope Deck could have been or he would have been, had we had that first album that they made come out, had the album that he ended up doing, I don't think it's what the original one would have been. The timing was off, the music was off, it just came out in a fucked up way. And Deck has never really attained that level of success that he deserves or that he should have attained. And it's definitely unfortunate, man, because he's
and the record company never
one of the
really
most
pushed his
talented
album like
dudes.
that. Yeah,
Never.
never pushed his album like that. And a lot of artists say that. They say if they don't get behind you with the, with the pump, not the publishing, the commercializing and the
Marketing, distribution,
and the
promotion.
marketing, distribution, promotion. Yeah, they tell you it'll kill it.
Oh yeah.
Because when his album dropped, I don't think I even knew it was out. I think I was in a record store and it was Deck's out. I was like, what? When did this happen? There was no write up in the source, nothing. There was normally when everybody else there was write up in the source. There were magazine coverage. You had commercials,
videos,
none of that. Videos,
radio play,
none of that. Radio, we ain't get none of that for Deck's album. None of that.
Oh. But man, I know you got to go fight crime. And before we go, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5, we were just talking the other day, inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is cool. Became the first group to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on this day, I should say, back in 2007. So that's March 12th, 2007. Is when they actually were inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But so what? All right, so this Saturday, DC Power Hour, phenomenal show we got for y'all. I think we got a guest coming on too. So this Saturday, 6:30 p.m. Y'all already know this is where we'll be at every Monday, every Wednesday, every Saturday. Stu got to go fight crime, so we got to cut it. We've been on an hour and a half basically. But yeah, man. So thank you guys, man, for coming and chilling, man. Slade, of course, Norton, Rad, Diamond, Onyx, Corey Adger, the homies, the Six Elementals. We salute you, and we'll see you guys Saturday. All right. So have a good week, and peace.
Peace.